Oftentimes we're asking for too much from our audience. Somebody may say, stop contributing to animal pollution, tell your friends to go vegetarian. That's not very specific. It's rather ambiguous. It's hard to measure or observe, right? So a much better target behavior is specific, it's measurable, it's observable, which means it's auditable. So these days on the internet, we can see whether people signed up on our website, they took that action, or whether they clicked the donate button. So we can actually measure these outcomes. So a much better call to action for this general goal would be adopt a No Meat Monday policy for 6 weeks, which includes eliminating all animal and fish meat, but not dairy products, and then tweet each Monday. So there's the accountability, right? Actually having people indicate that they've taken this action. This is going to be much more successful because it's highly specific. These are some patterns of influence that are really helpful to understand. The first is social proof and social validation. Just talked about that a little bit, but we look to others to know what's right to do. This is happening in a huge way on Facebook, where you find that 4 of your friends join a group, and then you are inspired to do so as well. So we look to our peers to provide cues as to what to do. So all of these have design implications. If these are all ways that you can motivate people, you should be thinking about how you can build in some of these principles to your campaign. Scarcity is a really interesting one. So if we think there's a limited window for us to take action on a cause, it's going to be we're going to be highly motivated to take action. So if you look at infomercials, for a limited time, right, for the next 40 minutes, there's even a countdown clock, right? That can be highly effective. So one thing you should think about is if you're going to be launching a campaign, building that scarcity into your campaign, setting a goal and a timeline for your campaign. Not just saying, hey, we'd like you to take some action, but saying, we need this action by this date for this reason, and your window's closing. Ability is all about making behavior simpler to do. This is, if you take one thing away from this presentation, I hope it would be this, which is just to be choosing really simple behaviors for your audience to start with. And I'm going to go into this a little more about how that can be highly effective. So often, our ask of our audience is much too high. And also, we make it too complex. We haven't even gone through all the steps to see just how complex this is. So, for example, just saying go veg is challenging, but saying cut out beef, that's much more specific. That's something that we can bite off. And then a trigger, which is this third element, we've talked about motivation, we've talked about ability, is that prompt that says do this now. It's a call to action, it's a request, it's a cue, it's an offer. Triggers can lead to a chain of behaviors. We did a really interesting study in the Persuasive Tech Lab where we're using mobile phones to help people exercise more. And the tendency would be to want to ask people to, to change their diet, change a lot of these different elements of their life. We had a very simple ask. They just documented whether they did any sort of outdoor activity during the day. That was it. It led to a lot of different behavior change. That person went and bought a new pair of shoes so that they could exercise properly. They made a number of different purchases. Their diet started to shift naturally as a result. So don't underestimate what these small actions can mean for downstream impact. Just get somebody to floss one tooth. Just floss one tooth, right? And while you're in there, okay, maybe I'll floss the one next to mine here too, and I'll floss another one next, so right? When people ask something of you, if you perceive that the task is large, you're not going to do it, right? So make it small for people. Make it small, and then extend that engagement pathway. Often we're thinking about how can we get, we're trying to motivate the wrong people. We're speaking to the wrong audience. This idea of hot triggers is really thinking about who is already motivated and primed to do something around this cause, and just giving them the opportunity to take that small next action to move down an engagement pathway. And targeting that audience first, that is where you're going to find success. It can really defeat your energy to be working on people who really don't care and trying to get them to care when you have a whole host of people who care a lot and haven't been given the trigger to take a next action. Example of a hot trigger is on Facebook. There's some sort of cue to take an action, add friend, and then you can click immediately and take that action. A cold trigger is when you're asked to do something, but there's no way to take that action at that moment. there's a lot of cold triggers in visual media and in video right now. If you look at YouTube, for example, you can't build in calls to action within the pieces themselves that link to an external website. So what that means is that people often are watching a piece on an issue, and then there's no trigger or way to take a next action. Maybe there's a link in the description somewhere, and maybe it says, you know, there's an HTML link or something, but you've got somebody motivated, connected, and then what? So building those hot triggers